You or someone you love needs help for an addiction. Where do you turn? Foundations Recovery Network offers individualized treatment for the whole person. Our goal goes beyond short-term sobriety. We address substance abuse and co-occurring mental health issues together, providing a firm foundation for long-term recovery. The first step is often the hardest, but we're here with a free assessment, insurance information, and treatment options. Our confidential helpline is available 24/7, so call 877-714-1318 and discover the Foundations Recovery Network difference today.
They named it San Diego, which in German means...
Oh, gnarly!
This is Rich Roll, and you're listening to Sober Guy Radio.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. Thanks to you for supporting the show. Welcome to Sober Guy Radio. I wanted to mention again that song, the intro song. We changed it up a bit this time. I felt it had a nice little San Diego vibe to it. So that's Watusi off of Humans' album titled Noontide. And they're good homies of the show and always making some good music. So be sure to check them out. We're coming to you live from the Innovations in Recovery Conference down in San Diego, California, and at Hotel Del Coronado. Absolutely beautiful here. We're having a good time getting some sun, hanging out, meeting some good people, having some good conversations. So we've already put out a couple of episodes today and yesterday, so be sure to check those out. You can go to thatsoberguy.com for past episodes, resources. You can contact us there, and you can also help support the show there. Now, if you have questions about whether you or a loved one may need some help, you can contact Foundations Recovery Network at 877-714-1318. They have nationwide residential and outpatient facilities, and they can provide a confidential assessment and review what the best treatment options are for you or your loved one. Once again, that number is 877-714-1318. And so let's get to our guest today. Really excited to talk to her. Her name is Renee Baribeau, and she's the author of Winds of Spirit. And Renee is also a shaman, which I'm stoked to learn a little bit more about. We talked a little bit yesterday, and you gave me a copy of the book, and you autographed it for me. That was so very kind of you. How are you?
I'm great, Shane. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah.
You know, they say when a book is autographed, then you have the energy of the author coming towards you too, and you're such a great spirit. So it was fun to sign that over.
Yeah, well, no, you know, and that's one of the cool things I love about just recovery in general, but even events like this is just get to meet some cool people and make some good connections and just chat. You know what I mean? That's what we're about to do right now. So it doesn't get much better. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're also in recovery too, right?
Yeah, last week it was 30 years that I hadn't drank.
30 years.
And I say that I put down the alcohol. Being a shaman, there's been times in my life that I've gone to the jungle, I've done plant medicines, and so in some more traditional recovery programs, people say, well, you're not sober, but I have recovery.
Yeah.
So.
So what is a shaman? I'm just going to get blunt and right to
that's
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So shamans have been around. The word comes from the Tungus, the Siberian shamans, that talks about the shaman is the person, the intermediary who can travel between worlds to affect change in your current everyday life. So they understand that absolutely everything is energy. And as you understand that energetic form of things, you can tap into healing, recovery, all those other aspects. And they use tools like drums, trance dancing, chanting. There's certainly medicines are used with a lot of shamanic traditions.
Yeah.
And we're finding that a lot more out of the range of the indigenous people these days, which you could go into a lot of conversation about that.
Yeah, because it's not something that you really necessarily see every day or even hear about, at least from my perspective. So, is it something that is becoming a bit more known? Is the shaman in kind of that way?
Yeah, there's been there's an issue because a lot of the indigenous people want to protect their cultures and their ways, and so there's a lot of talk about cultural appropriation, but when in Winds of Spirit we go right back to the fact that all of that information, all of that spirituality, all of that God was in the wind from the very get-go at the creation of the planet. And so I think the information's always been in the wind. You just have to bend your ear to hear it.
Yeah. Sorry, when you were saying wind, I always think of this, something that's always close to me, and I think it's in Ecclesiastes in the Bible, actually, and it talks about a chasing of the wind. As humans, we're constantly chasing the wind, and it's like it's almost like you're never satisfied by that. What do you think about the chasing after the wind?
That's an interesting thing, because ever since I found the winds of spirit and really tapped into what this meant, I felt more held by spirit for all of the 30 years, all of the 40 years, all the 60 years that I was seeking.
Yeah.
And the truth is Holy Spirit is a wind, Ruach is a wind, Nirvana is a no wind. So before religion and before the Bible took wind into a translatable story for people to organize around, people were wind believers. Wind is invisible, wind is more powerful than you, and wind, animals change their direction of travel based in the wind.
Yeah, that's a trip, and I want to hear you more. So what about the sun? Is there a representation with the sun and versus the wind, or what's that look like?
Well, all of the nature elements, and the sun god certainly in like the Caro and the Peruvian traditions and Egypt, the sun god has always been an important character. My old clinical director said, so are you going to talk about the earth in your next book? And he wanted me to do all the elements, because he really, when he started to really get beyond that this isn't clinical, he thought, wow, this book is really cool. How are we going to translate it so everyone gets it?
What got you in? What got you into ultimately becoming a shaman? And then even before that, like what was that defining moment, I guess, where you said, man, I'm really going to kind of go after this way?
I resisted. I was 30. My father, I was a chef. My grand opening, and the next day my father went home and had a massive stroke, and he was my banking connections, and it was to talk about those two paths in the woods. It was my defining moment. Was like, do I want to die at 52, or do I want to see that there's something more to this life? So the next thing you know, I said, well, I need to do something different. And then one thing led to the next, because we're always on a spiritual path.
Yeah, sure.
You either know it or you don't know it, but you're always on a spiritual path. And I found myself in the woods one night doing a fire walk with a nun. And talk about a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Because even then you had this idea of the Catholic Church, the nuns, well, if you want to get into some misogyny stuff, the nuns weren't cared for the way the priests were, and so they all lived together in a house, and she became a body worker and led fire walks.
Yeah, well, no, and that's I was actually raised Catholic growing up, so I did catechism, I did First Communion, all that stuff, and and I'm not knocking the Catholic Church or anything, but as I got older, it just there was something about it to me where I started to discover a difference between spirituality and religion, I guess, and that was a big awakening for me. And I think it really took, going into recovery for me to ultimately kind of start prying that door open a little bit more. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on the difference between religion and being spiritual?
I think religion, in its most perfect order, provides you the ritual and the ceremonies, which a lot of them came from the indigenous people, because a lot of my research for this book took me back to the Catholic missionaries.
Really?
Because they were the first ones to write.
Yeah.
So they came into these tribes, and they were the scribes. So they wrote it down through their perspectives. And my belief is that then the church took and integrated the best of the indigenous practices in with what they were creating as a body of scripture. And so there is no clean Catholicism without the indigenous. Like, you go to Peru, and when they were having people paint on the church ceilings, they got the people chewing the cocoa leaves. Oh, shit. No way.
That's what that is, huh? I didn't even, actually, now that you said that, I just had the picture in there. Yeah, I've seen those photos before, but I never put two and two together, and it's a cocoa leaf.
Well, because what happened in the Peruvian, which helps you function at high altitudes.
Yeah.
So when you're the Peruvian, the indigenous people, they had a farm on these stepped hills, and so they needed the cocoa in order to breathe at those altitudes while they were digging their potatoes. And so when the Catholics came in, for a lot of those indigenous people, they thought, oh, good, more God. because they already had a plethora of gods, so it never occurred to them that they would lose their way and lose their visions as they embraced. And not all of them embraced it. Some of them headed for the highlands, but for some of the other ones who did embrace it, the shamans will sit in the back of the Catholic Church with their cloth mastanas and their mesa stones inside there, and pray to both.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I always have, especially lately, been, we question a lot of stuff. Like I only know what I'm told in a sense, or what I've, researched in a sense too, but especially from a young age. We were talking about with TJ actually about how we're programmed at a young age, whether it's our parents, the school system, whatever it is, the television. And so it's really about unlearning things as we get older and then jumping into recovery. I kind of want to jump into more of the book though. Like how does the book relate to recovery so much?
Well, first of all, it has my recovery story in there. So when this all happened and my world fell apart, because usually a shamanic initiation can mean an entirely dismemberment of your life.
Yeah.
Which you find like a lot of addicts when they're down on their knees and like they're begging for some kind of mercy.
Yeah.
They could have that initiation. They can have that phase of, okay, something's got to give here. And for me, in that was, I thought I wrote a different book. I wrote The Shaman Chef, How Cooking Saved My Life, because I was a chef, and the act of cooking was a very mindful activity that brought me present. And probably I used to have that, what's the use? What's the use? Why am I here? What's the use? And the fact that I had a restaurant full of people every night, I had to perform.
Yeah.
And so with these winds of spirit, once I really embraced that they were an energy that could hold you, I no longer was seeking spirit outside of me anymore. I'd go outside, I feel the wind blow, and I knew that I was held and that these winds had my back always.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your personal story? Because I think that would be interesting. I don't want to give the book away or anything.
That's all right. My personal
story
story is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I was 30 years old. I was a up-and-coming, talented chef. And after that grand opening, when my father went home and had a stroke, I found my way somehow to... the truth was I was attracted to my therapist. And the therapist said, if you don't quit drinking, you're going to be in the places where cocaine is. So I wanted the therapist to like me. So I quit drinking so I wasn't in the place where cocaine, and it took me another year to quit the cocaine.
Yeah.
Once I finally got rid of the cocaine, I became suicidally depressed, because you take away the substances that have held you since the time you were little, you have to face something. And so I ended up in a lockdown ward of a mental institution, because they didn't have dual diagnosis treatment centers back then.
Oh, I see.
And I learned about how the brain worked. Armed with just a little bit of information about how the brain worked, I thought, well, I don't necessarily want this lithium and this Zoloft. And I found myself with an Ayurvedic doctor who promised me that he would balance out my organs and that I wouldn't need those medications in my life. Now, I'm not recommending everyone go off their Zoloft or their lithium, but I am saying that those aren't the only approaches.
Yeah.
They're one approach, and this other path couldn't be a lot more strenuous. And I worked with him for a year, and I got myself balanced in a way that I could navigate life, and the AA gave me the structure to show up.
Got it.
And then I found myself at a soul retrieval workshop. And what really made me hit onto that shamanic path was when I went into the sweat lodge for the first time, the Lakota in Nipi, and I got on my knees, I crawled in, didn't know how to pray, but there was something about the earth and the heat and the connection that I felt like, oh my God, I'm home.
Really?
Uh-huh.
What is that like being in? I've seen those on TV. I've never done one. The sweat lodge or this. At least the one I saw was quiet. You couldn't talk in it, so I don't know if they're all like that or.
Well, you talk when it's your turn.
Oh, okay.
You talk in turn, and they sing songs.
Uh-huh.
So see, that's what happened. The problem isn't with the religion, because it had the rituals and the ceremonies and the rites of passage that we need, that humans crave. It was that we got disconnected from them.
Yeah.
They weren't working, but I totally believe that a shamanic path gives you back, it gives you back the structure.
Yeah.
It gives you back the rituals. It gives you back the ceremony. Young men don't have, and women, we don't have rites of passage anymore. And we need those because that's the day that you say like, I'm expected to be an adult a little bit. And so we're going right from something that's not working with no structure into addiction, which is very ritualistic. Yeah. So we're still looking for the ritual. We're still looking for the shift of the brain. We're just looking for it in the wrong places.
So how do you transfer that then into some sort of a recovery program with the winds or with something? So for some people who non-traditional. So somebody who feels a call to nature, instead of if you do an overlay of the 12 steps, it works on the cycles. It works. The spiritual traditions of the 12 steps match all spiritual programs worldwide. There's a certain kind of and if you take it back all the way, it goes back to nature. There's spring, there's summer, there's fall, and there's winter. And people set New Year's resolutions that they can never keep because you're supposed to be hibernating. Why would you be? Now there's a lot of fun going on here. I was just going to say there's an exciting game of cornhole going on behind us, and they're like literally doing cartwheels. But sorry, go ahead.
I played earlier.
Oh, did you win?
I did. Of course I won. I'm an addict. Prize. There's no prizes. The prize is that you won.
You won. There you go. Take that.
So instead of like navigate, for me the spring is the first 3 steps. The summer is the 4, 5, and 6. The fall is the 7, 8, and 9, and then the top of the north, the winter, that spiritual, that community buy-in is when you can actually live that and be of service in your life. Yeah. So it translates really well into this seasonal thing, and then these cardinal winds, these east, south, north, and west. In this book, they're the Greek ones: Eurus, Notus in the south, Zephyrus, and Boreas in the north. They have held the structure of humanity since. I found it as early as the tablets, cave drawings before that. So we've always wanted to know where we were in space and time.
I wanted to read a. So where'd it go here? I'm opening your book now. Someone who's kind of opened my mind up a little bit more to this is Noah Levine. And I saw he wrote a little thing in here too, about the book. It says, beautifully written, truly inspiring, practical, and applicable. This book will help guide you to the true path of finding your own inner wisdom and verified faith. Read it, apply the wisdom, and together we shall create positive change on this planet from the inside out. So really cool. But the last part in that, from the inside out, you kind of already alluded to that too. Like happiness comes from within. Like I can't make my wife happy. I can't make my friends happy. Like they're going to have to do that themselves. And it really starts with me and vice versa. They're not going to make me happy either. That concept, it takes work too. I definitely don't have it all figured out. That's for sure. How do we get better at that?
Well, I think back to that when I finally found myself at a real, I call it the military 12-step model, where, they were going to take us through the steps, and I was sitting there and she was telling us the only reason she was going to take us through the steps was so that we'd be of use to anyone else. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, I want to go through the steps so she gets sober and I get out of pain. It was all about
what's in it for me.
What's in it for me.
Yeah.
And when I was doing, in this model of 12-step work, I had to fly back to the East Coast and fly to 3 different cities on the East Coast to make amends. And
really?
Yeah.
So you actually went back?
I went back.
And face-to-face amends?
Yeah, and sometimes with graveside amends.
Really?
And
That's heavy.
I had the most profound experience at a graveside amends was that I had a sous chef who worked for me in my restaurant that I beat up on a daily basis.
Really?
And he died of AIDS. So I went and made a graveside amends to him. And so the next day, I thought I was going to get out of doing the amends because the woman said, my husband's out of town and, he's in AA and he'll understand. I'll tell him you called. So then I go to lunch with my friend, and all of a sudden I had lived at this apartment at an upside down light in Tipperary Hill. All of a sudden the Applebee's puts us at a replica of the upside down light.
Oh, no
And
way.
then they're like, I call his wife back. I said, nah,
Sorry.
that's not going to work. So I drive 2 hours out of town to where he was, and I make this amends, and he was so grateful. He said, I couldn't get out of bed. I was so depressed. I've been sober 20 years.
Yeah.
He said, but I didn't make my amends this time. I went all the way through again. Thank you for coming. So I was like feeling pleased as punch.
Yeah.
So I'm walking around this town 2 hours outside of where I was, and all of a sudden I walk into a store, and there in front of me was the mother of the young man that I had made the graveside amends to the day before.
Really?
And my mouth dropped.
Yeah.
And her friends there, some woman's over, and I said to her, well, I made an amends to Jim yesterday, and she said, and he forgives you, and that's why I'm here. And it's those moments when you make those amends that and there wasn't just one, there was 10 of those.
Yeah.
That was probably the most significant, but there was a lot of them. And so when you become available to other people, then you can explore other options.
Yeah.
And you need something to structure you, whether it's AA, whether it's going to the Lakota Lodge for 10 years, whether it's doing this wind work, whether it's a year-long treatment program, whatever it is, something needs to give you structure back to hold you until you can have that spiritual experience.
Well, I've kind of had that take, especially ever since I started getting the opportunity on the podcast to talk to a lot of different people with a lot of different points of view and, their own experiences through recovery. I always think that is important. Like something that works for me is not going to work for the next guy and vice versa. I totally had a question for you, and it totally went out of my mind now.
That's because I was talking too long.
No. You're doing great. You're doing great. This stuff it's really interesting. I had something to follow up with that, but I completely forgot. So, what's next for you? I mean, what's going on right now? So you did speak though, yeah? Was it yesterday?
No, I'm speaking tomorrow.
Oh, you're speaking tomorrow. I thought you spoke already.
No, it's tomorrow. I'm speaking called One Recovery, Many Paths.
So what does that look like?
Well, because truthfully, once you wake up, once you're really wide awake, the view is the same.
Yeah.
You're present, you're of service, and people like to be around you.
Yeah.
Those are they're really simple things. And we chase that for so long. But that where we get locked into these ideas that there's like for so long that AA was the only way and a lot of treatment centers still they don't like the medically assisted treatment but there's these like TJ's conscious recovery. There's all of these other ways because a society is lost. So we need as many ways to get people back awake as possible. So my thing is to carry this message. Let the winds carry their own message because this book is of me, but it's not me. It's these winds were locked away in time for thousands of years. And this is the first time they've reappeared on the planet at this very, very tumultuous time when hold on to your hats. It's going to get rough out there. And but just know something. I believe as a spiritual shaman that you signed up to be here right now. You signed up to navigate these choppy waters where the light has got to re-shine on this planet. Gender's dissolving. There's all of these things going on. But our work as spiritual beings is to shine our lights even brighter.
Yeah, and that kind of, you said a couple things there, but one of them, in the foundation of recovery, we can kind of create our own recipe to it after a while, especially the longer we're in recovery. Like I was saying earlier, I get to talk to a lot of people. Well, man, what about that? I'll try something different. But you brought up a good point earlier. You need to have some sort of foundation. What is it? And that's changed for me. It's consistently changing some of the stuff because I'm trying new things and I'm trying to figure out what is that perfect recipe for me. But my point is we really do got to have something that is a firm foundation up front to really keep us dialed in. I mean, that's so important.
Well, Americans especially, and I don't know other cultures because I haven't lived in them so much, but we like the 32 flavors. Oh, I don't like chocolate today. I'm going to go over to have vanilla. And this, I got 16,000 AA meetings that I can choose from. And you're not talking like you move the chairs. I'm going over there. And one of the things that in most, nature-based traditions is that you pick a path and you stay with it. So if it's shamanism that calls you, stay there till the miracle happens. If it's if it's mindfulness based, stay there till you can't just say, oh my God, somebody hurt my feelings today, I'm out.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I really am a supportive of a lot of, especially with such a young addictive population, I'm really supportive of some of those longer 94 months, a year program, because we're talking about, like when I first got sober, I didn't know how to make my bed.
Yeah.
I mean, my sponsor said, make your bed every day. I'm thinking like, well, what for?
Yeah.
I mean,
why?
with the structure of this container, like if you look at these east, south, west, and north winds, humanity has needed this structure since the beginning. So to take and blow up the structure, it doesn't work so well. You see how it's working.
Yeah. What does a shaman recovery program look like? Just in layman's terms for somebody, like real simple, somebody who doesn't have any idea. Like the only thing I know is a 12-step program, really.
Okay.
I mean, or refuge, but what does a shaman look like?
So with the shaman, what changed for me was I went to do a soul retrieval workshop. And, there's so many different psychological things, but a soul retrieval is that trauma fragments your soul. You've been abused, you've been this. So parts of your soul are left over in Toledo and San Francisco. And so part of the first shamanic thing is to find out where these fragments of souls are missing and bring them back into one universal, cohesive whole.
Okay.
Some of those parts, I've had to say, hey, listen, you didn't grow up with the rest of me, see you. But so once I had my soul back intact, I closed the restaurant, I moved west, I found the sweat lodge, and part of the sweat lodge for me was the consistency of showing up every single week, putting the blankets on, taking the blankets off. For the first year, I just complained about who else didn't take the blankets off. It's just me.
Yeah.
And finally one day it was like, after I did the steps in combination with it, it was like, oh my God, just gag me.
Yeah.
Because you're recovered when you show, like, for example, one of my bosses said, you can't bring the wind work to work. And I just laughed at him because it was like, I take the winds with me.
It's everywhere, right?
Everywhere. It's like, once you become a beacon of light, you're a beacon of light.
Yeah.
And then when you don't feel good, you know that you need an adjustment or you have a few teachers. So the shamanic path is like the Vedic path. You sit down every day and do your mantras.
Yeah.
So with the shamanic, they might journey to the underworld, find out what's, they have spirit helpers to help them. My spirit helpers happen to be the wind. Okay. So one day I did something really, my friend was selling shampoo. And so she had these pump bottles I wanted. So I took one. I got wind slapped. There was like this wind and a constant nattering at me. Yeah. What makes you think you should just, take this without asking your friends? So, so they've become the guidance for, and then I'm there, like, I call her up, I say, hey, I took one of those. So, but it was just, I said, well, I really should have asked you first. Yeah. So, whatever it is in your teachers and keep you in line, but you have to live in integrity.
So, is the wind almost in a sense a form, or is it a form of a higher power, a God, a replacement for that? I guess that's kind of what I'm, like, how do you describe that? Because that's kind of what it sounds like to me. I don't know if that's correct or not, but...
I wouldn't say that it's a replacement. I would tell you at the beginning, when the earth was formed, the wind was there.
The wind was there. So it's
always been there. So what happened was we tried to understand what that higher power was so that we could congregate people around this group. But if you go to the wind, you're going to the direct source.
But did God create the wind?
I think the wind, I think that there is no separation between energy. So like, we're all connected through the wind. The wind that we're spreading now is going to go around the world in a few short days.
Yeah.
So there's, in the shamanic world, everything's of energy, so there is no separation.
Okay.
So
it's constant.
It's constant. So the rock is God. The water is God. Everything is God. There's more God.
Huh.
So we try to boil that down to that there's some big thing in the sky that's going to judge you when you die. But you know what?
Yeah.
How do you feel today?
Yeah.
You know when you're in integrity and you feel good. So we're compasses. We're attracted to this earth, and we stay planted based on our own magnetic or fields, right? So we're really of the earth.
Got it.
But shamans understood that, and so they have this reverence for everything that makes everything godlike.
It's a trip. There's so many elements. You could probably discuss this for days on end and say, well, what about this? What about that? Because my mind's going on, well, what about that? We want to debate and talk and ask questions and stuff. We obviously don't have enough time to do that today, but I'm really interested in checking the book out. And I just want to thank you again for giving me a copy of it and signing it too. I mean, it's really nice of you. Thank you. And thanks for coming on the show too.
Thanks, Jane. Let me just tell you one way that you can use the book.
I want you to do the wind whistle too.
Okay,
before we go after this. Okay, I don't want to forget.
Yeah, so what you can do is you can just open up to the back and get some wind guidance for a single day. So like if I just opened up to Carrie, the Malaysian wind, which is really funny because someone from Malaysia today said, oh, I want your wind whistle. And Carrie arrives as a wild western wind of self-expression. His presence may conjure up ghosts that are better left in the past. Take time to discern whether your current creative expressions merit a fertile garden plot or should be discarded like seeds in the jungle, left to regenerate on their own.
Huh. Interesting.
Shall we call to Carrie? Was that
Let's
a good one
it.
for you today?
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
All right, so this is a wind whistle. It's being made for me by a man who doesn't speak any English. It's an Aztec version of a wind whistle, but it's made
really
totally
cool
totally made for the Practical Shaman, and I'm going to blow it for you. Let's call to Carrie.
All right, let's do it.
And see if you feel the God in this wind.
All right, let's do it. That's pretty cool. It even sounds cooler through the SMB7 shirt too. Yeah,
I love that.
That's nice. Thank you.
I'm
That's
gonna have to
pretty
get
sweet.
one of those.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff, Renee. Well, thank you. If anyone wants to, and I'll put the links in the. I already put the link to the book in the show notes here. If anyone wants to reach out to you, find more information, how could they do that?
Well, you can come over on Facebook to the Wind Clan. There's about over 1,500 Wind Believers, and it's a great tribe of people who are supporting each other. Or go over to thepracticalshaman.com and check me out there.
Got it. Thanks, Renee. Thanks so much for coming on Sober Guy Radio.
Oh, I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in today, guys. Go to thatsoberguy.com for more information. Coming to you live from Innovations in Recovery 2018 in San Diego, California. It's brought to you by Foundations Recovery Network. Peace, love, respect. Keep your blood clean.